Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding TV, a podcast about television. I am David Chen.
And I'm Patrick Willems.
On today's podcast episode, we're going to be discussing Season 1, Episode 8 of Andor, entitled Narkina 5. This episode was directed by Toby Haynes, written by Beau Willimon. Incredible pedigree for this episode. Beau Willimon, the creator of House of Cards.
So
the U.S. version, I should say. Yeah,
I know. They got the creator of House of Cards to be a staff writer on the show.
I know, right?
Like the staff writers on the show are like, okay, the creator of House of Cards and the writer-director of Nightcrawler. Not bad.
It's not bad at all. Not bad at all. You can always find more episodes of this podcast at podcast.decodingtv.com. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com and find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter at decodingtv. Before we get to Season 1, Episode 8, Patrick, we got a ton of feedback from last week's episode of the podcast.
Let's find out what I was wrong about this time.
Well, not that much that you were wrong about, but I do think that, first of all, a lot of comments about Karn and the Karn tent. People love the Karn tent. What can we say, right?
It's sweeping the nation.
It's sweeping the nation.
The word Karn tent, it's verbal wildfire.
People were very disappointed that we missed out on an opportunity to use the phrase carnage after the events of episode 3 of the show.
Here's the thing. Yeah. I don't think we missed out on... Well, I bet there will be more carnage, and we will have opportunities to talk about that carnage. Are people very into the ship?
Yeah,
with Karn and Dedra Meero?
We had discussed different names for what the Karn Dedra Meero ship might be. Didrarn, Miral,
I really think Kiro is like the way to go.
Okay.
It's nice and simple. It's easy to pronounce. I'm going with Kiro from here. And
okay,
just gonna not to jump ahead of ourselves, but this is a big Kiro episode.
Patrick's putting all his chips on the Kiro name for the Dedra Meero Cyril Karn ship. And hopefully everyone will get on board on that ship. Okay. So a few comments and follow-ups from last week's episode of the podcast and the show. Obviously, last week's episode was called Announcement. Also, I got a bunch of comments saying, hey, David Chen, you were right to describe that episode's title as not very good, because a lot of people saw that episode pop up in their feeds and were like, oh, do Patrick and David have an announcement? But no, it was just the name of the episode.
Are they canceling the podcast?
Yeah, is this the end of the show?
Wait, do you think it got more people to listen to because they were like, "Oh, something serious happened. I got to see what this announcement is."
I hope so.
Yeah, I will say I'm glad that Andor decided to have a normal title this episode, as in a title that sounds very Star Wars specific and will lead to no confusion.
I agree. Okay. Also, so here's some follow-ups from last week's episode called Announcement, right? A lot of people compared the scene where Clem is apprehended and then eventually murdered to the Boston Massacre as kind of a thing that started accidentally, and also both things took place in winter. So I think and also presumably helped to kickstart a revolution. So I think there was some parallels there that people brought up that I don't think we brought up last week, so I just wanted to call that out. Another thing from last week that I want to bring up is the soundtrack for the first few episodes of Andor were released on streaming services. And in particular, there's a track called Niamos that, I gotta say, it slaps. The track is called Niamos Morlana Club Mix.
I love it.
Have you listened to it, Patrick?
Oh, of course.
Yes, yes.
I mean, because I think as soon as last week's episode came out, I tweeted about when is Nicholas Bertel's Niamos music coming out, and so multiple friends texted me the link as soon as it dropped, because it wasn't on Spotify and music streaming platforms.
I listened to it. I've listened to it 50 times on Apple Music already.
Yeah. It's but it was the scores for the first 3 episodes, and then also Niamos, right?
It's episodes 1 through 4, including
Oh.
and then Naimos, because Naimos was episode 6, right? So, or 7. I should say.
7.
Yeah. So he broke the Nicholas Bertel broke the soundtrack continuity to give us Naimos early. You know,
I think he knew that he had to.
he knew he had the equivalent of a score gold mine in his pocket.
I mean,
he needed to share it with the world.
That's the single.
Yeah. Totally. Okay, but anyway, check out Nicholas Bertel's score. It's very good. I've listened to the whole thing. It's really, really. There's certain moments in the show that gave me chills, and listening to the music reminded me of those moments. It's a great score. So we got a bunch more follow-ups, and I have gotten there is one of my friends and advisors, has cautioned me against using too many follow-ups at the beginning of the show. People just want to hear the recap. To which I say, these follow-ups are too good. I'm sorry, I need to read them. So I apologize. If you are listening to this, you know who you are. But I got to get to these follow-ups because they're so good. Okay, here we go. Captain Galactic at youtube.com/decoding TV commented the following. Something I think is important in the Marva Cassian scene is how Marva was radicalized by the idealized vision of the heist as a bunch of heroes taking on the Empire for the good of the galaxy. However, Cassian knows the reality of the heist, a bunch of people who only half knew what they were doing, stealing money, and then most of them died, and one of them was willing to betray the rest for money. I think that's a big reason why Marva doesn't get through to him, because he's just thinking, you don't know what it was really like. End quote.
It's a good point.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think we touched upon this last week about how actions that people take, they don't necessarily understand the full significance of them and how they can reverberate, right? Sometimes it's incredibly intentional and thought through, and everyone's on the same page. But more often than not, it is a ragtag crew, or not everyone's aligned. And but yeah, it's a great sort of call out of why Marva and Cassian might be feeling differently. And obviously something that continues to have resonance in this episode.
Yeah. It's also it's funny, her idealized version, she's basically imagining that this heist was pretty much just like all the stuff in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
She might as well be imagining Luke Skywalker, crusading in there, doing what's right for the most moral purposes, and then piecing out.
Yeah.
Does make you wonder that during the events of the original trilogy, were there other more Aldani-esque things happening on the fringes without the main characters? Like that thing that Mon Mothma said many Bothans died to get us this information. Do you think those Bothans were a bunch of mercenaries that were,
I think some of them were. Some of them probably were. Maybe. So
I'm sure. Honestly, the way Star Wars goes, I'm sure we'll get some streaming miniseries about that in 3 years.
On last week's episode of the podcast, Patrick, you commented on the character of, I think, Wolf Yularen. Is that what his first name is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wolf, but with 2 U's.
Yeah. Wolf Yularen shows up on last week and this week's episode of Andor. And Jazzteca comments, I was so happy to hear Patrick catch Yularen being an important character. Specifically, Yularen was the admiral of Anakin's fleet in Clone Wars. He's a pretty significant character throughout the show, voiced by Tom Kane. He's also the narrator of Clone Wars. Yularen makes a brief appearance in Rebels, too. As for his rank, at some point, Yularen becomes a colonel of the ISB, which I believe is what we see in Andor. What I love the most about the show is that it does the same thing with him as they do with the fun little Easter eggs in Luthen's shop. He's subtly introduced. No musical or visual cues as to his importance unless you recognize him from his mustache or watch with the closed captions on. He's another tie between Andor and the broad story of Star Wars without detracting from the show or the scene itself. End quote. Totally agreed. Great call out, Patrick. And yeah, Wolf Yularen, a very important character throughout Star Wars that's very subtly introduced in the show Andor, right?
Also, for me, another reminder that at some point soon, I really need to get back and actually watch the rest of Clone Wars. So, I guess I have more of the connective pieces. I started watching it right before the pandemic broke out. And then I think because all our schedules got thrown off, I just got out of the habit of watching it. I think I'd gotten up to season 4. So I should finish that.
All right. And Kieran writes, about the K2SO-esque droid that we saw last episode, right? Quote, I want to add a few thoughts on the appearance of the droid that looked like K2SO on Space Miami in Episode 7. That droid type is a KX series droid, an Imperial security droid that has appeared in stories set in this time period since Rogue One introduced them back in 2016. Although they haven't appeared much, one of their biggest appearances was in the game Jedi Fallen Order, guarding Wookiee slave encampments on Kashyyyk. As to whether or not that specific droid is K2, as some fans have speculated, I have my doubts. The meeting between K2 and Cassian was recounted in a tie-in comic to Rogue One that took place in 2 BBY, which is 3 years out from where we are now in Andor. However, it wouldn't be the first time a canon comic was changed in a Disney Plus Star Wars series. The origins of Star Wars Rebels character Kanan Jarrus were recounted in a comic titled Kanan before being retconned recently in the animated series The Bad Batch. Let me just pause right here during this comment and say, unless Kieran is wrong, he or she clearly knows what they're talking about. And so yes. I'm very impressed by the canon knowledge of Star Wars. Okay.
It does also make me wonder if, since the meeting between Cassian and K2SO has already been shown in other material, that because we know that in Season 2, apparently every arc is going to like jump forward a year in time. Yeah. If they're going to just skip over that and at some point just be like, oh,
they're already buddies.
A year later, K2SO is here.
Yeah. Anyway, to continue Kieran's comment, though he may still not appear this season, as K2's actor, Alan Tudyk, may have been busy recording lines for Optimus Prime in the upcoming series Transformers Earthspark while this was being made. I do think he'll appear at some point, as in Rogue One, they seem pretty close. It would be like writing Night of the Coconut, which you can watch now on Nebula, great film, Patrick, without Patrick's parents. They seem too close to each other to leave out. And I do trust this creative team to work him into the show in an interesting, well-thought-out way, given what we've seen so far. However, I do think that the droid appearing gives some good thematic weight, even if it isn't K2SO specifically. As we saw in the scene and on Kashyyyk, if you played that game, these droids are strong and brutal, and using them on Andor for a crime he didn't commit helps to effortlessly portray the uncaring brutality of the Empire at this time, and by extension, other fascist regimes the Empire parallels. It does something the show has been pretty good at, reusing pre-existing imagery to convey the show's the new show's themes. Plus, these droids just look cool. End quote. Really thoughtful, amazing comment from Kieran. And
one of the best comments we've ever received, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all that knowledge and insight, Kieran. And
great opinions as well.
Yes.
Really, really strong opinions that I agree with.
Decoding TV at gmail.com. Obviously, we are also reading comments at youtube.com/decoding TV. But that is the follow-up from last week's episode of Andor. Okay, Patrick Willems, let's dive into the show. Season 1, Episode 8, entitled Narkina 5. Overall thoughts, I always like to start with Patrick.
I'm a broken record. I really liked this episode. It was really good. I really liked the show. I will say that this
boring.
Is I know. They like it again. Turning this one off. Yep. A thing that I think is kind of funny about Andor, a show that I just think is great, that I'm a big fan of, is that was just kind of occurring to me at the end of this episode. Outside of the concluding episodes and the arcs, these episodes don't really tend to like have endings. Mm-hmm. They really just like the credits come up and you just kind of go, oh, I guess that's the end of the episode.
I will say I agree with you. Like they feel like we're ending in the middle of a story, and because we are in some ways. But and we are, this is the next 3 episode, or the beginning of the next 3 episode arc, according to Donnie Gilroy, as you pointed out last week. But I will credit the show as there's generally a good vibe when you end the episode. Not when I say good, I don't mean positive. I mean like a thoughtful vibe. Like there's a specific purpose to why they chose to end it with that shot. I'm left leaving the theater of my house, on a specific mood that they're trying to convey. But I agree with you that it does feel like mid-story we're ending, right?
Oh, so. Yeah. And again, this is not really a complaint. It is just like, here's the thing. It's the kind of thing that would annoy me in a less good show.
Yeah, totally.
But I think Andor is able to get away with it because I'm so compelled to keep watching because I'm so interested in everything that's going on. I will say this, in this episode, a big change from the previous episode, because last episode I was talking about how, like, you know, it's amazing to me how Mon Mothma is, like, you know, maybe the most interesting character on the show, and I'm so fascinated by everything that's happening with her sneaky politicking at dinner parties. And this in this episode, I mean, she's not in it that much, but I was like, oh, this was a change. The Mon Mothma Coruscant stuff I thought was the least interesting part of this episode, and I thought the Cassian stuff was genuinely the most interesting.
Yes, this is the one. I mean, despite what you're saying, though, Cassian maybe has like 8 lines in this whole episode, I think. So it is really impressive what they're able to do with him. But yeah, the stuff, the Cassian storyline is really, really fascinating. I mean, this episode was incredible, in my opinion, because I feel like every week we're like introduced to these whole new worlds that we had never even, certainly a new planet, but also like, or new planets, but also just the idea of, I mean, Patrick, I would be shocked if the people who created this episode were not at least partially inspired by the John Woo film starring Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, Face Off.
Famously one of your favorite movies.
Not only that, but also it contains a prison called Erewhon Prison, which is nowhere spelled backwards. And in which people, like the makeup of the prison itself is crucial to keeping the prisoners subjugated and disciplined.
Yes, where that also involves boots and special floors.
Boots, but it's the inverse this time, Pat. It's like, hey, that arrow on prison in Face Off was like totally crude. Like getting these prisoners to wear these heavy boots. What if the whole prison was electrified? You know, like incredible concept, incredible like design, like just like production design and everything. It's like it's a whole new world, a whole different look. The uniforms are different than everywhere else. And then Gollum shows up leading Andor's. I think this is like a surprise casting, right?
Yeah, I don't think anyone knew about this, but also Andy Serkis has already played, in very recent memory, a major character in Star Wars. You know, obviously he is Supreme Leader Snoke.
I mean, how do you know that he's not Supreme Leader Snoke in this show, Patrick? You know, maybe that's what
David, as we all remember from the 2019 film Star Wars Episode 9: The Rise of Skywalker, Snoke was a clone, and there were a bunch of him in tanks.
They grew Snoke in a vat. It's true. It's true.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to bring up that movie. But the thing is, Andy Serkis is obviously like the king of motion capture performances, usually playing creatures and animals, and I'm genuinely happy for Andy Serkis whenever he gets to play a human. And I'm like, oh, you didn't have to wear a weird spandex suit and put dots all over your face. But we actually get to like look at you for a change.
That's true. I mean, I felt that way years ago, Patrick, but I mean, he's been in like a bunch of Marvel stuff at this point. I feel like we're actually getting to finally appreciate Andy Serkis as a talented actor in his own right.
He was days. Alfred this year, but again, it's nice that he's able to, considering that he already had a major role in Star Wars, but not looking anything like himself. I'm glad that he gets to have a second chance in Star Wars, but like where we can see him.
Does this make up for Snoke, Patrick? Do you think? No, I'm not going to ask you that question.
No, it's I mean, I think he's really good as Snoke. At least in one of the 2 movies that he's in, he gets to give an actual performance.
Yes.
But no, I mean, what's fun about this? I mean, there's so much that's fun about this planet, but it's one of these situations where we're always talking about what's good about the show is that everything is so fully realized, all the characters seem so three-dimensional, and we have Cassian coming into this new place where there's already like there are dynamics between the people there. They've been doing this for a long time, he's trying to fit in and like acclimate himself to the way everything works here and catch up and learn the rules. And we're like, oh my god, another fully realized place that runs in a certain way. It's like I'm just like I would have been fine if the whole episode were just Cassian on his own there, learning how the prison works.
Yeah. Well, that is what a lot of the episode is. But yeah, well, here let's get to it. We'll get to it.
Also, you asked me major thoughts about the episode. The content in this episode,
Yes.
the Kiro content in this
Yes.
episode. Oh my God! When Karn is in that interrogation room and then Dedra Meero walks in, I'm like, this is the moment I have been waiting for. Look at these two young fascists who don't know it yet, but they are gonna fall in love.
Yep, 100%. 100%. So let's start. We're going to start with all the non-Narkina 5 stuff, and then we're going to go to the Narkina 5 stuff. So we'll start with the content. We're at the Imperial Standards Bureau. Karn is working along this massive bay of computers. Every time you see it, it's always impressive, like how stultifying and oppressive this atmosphere is, and how you're just really a cog in the machine. Karn is in trouble. A bunch of people show up. The principal's office showing up to pull him out of his job. So
the ISB people are here.
Yep, the ISB people here. They pull him out, and Dedra Meero walks in, and it's like, holy crap! Plot lines intersecting. We learn from Dedra Meero that she has that Karn has continued to submit requests to the Bureau of Data Standards looking for information on Cassian Andor, and he's basically said a bunch of things about Cassian that are lies, like Cassian's, has done this, or is this kind of person, is representing himself in this way.
I think the important thing here is because he works in, what is it, like the Department of Fuel Purity or whatever.
Yes.
So all he can do is like send requests and messages within the organization, within the Bureau of Standards. And so he's just sending messages saying that that Cassian Andor is an engineer or whatever. He's doing it within like the official guidelines as if Cassian is another employee. But he's just being like unresponsive engineer, or like I have not heard back from this guy, like, because he can't actually formally make a request to the ISB or anything like that. So he's just basically sending weird suspicious messages within his bureau just to try to get their attention, which he eventually succeeds in doing.
He has filed 5 false inquiries, we are told by Dedra.
And 6 as of this morning. As
of this morning. And she says, I love the terminology, like she says, you have engaged the curiosity of the ISB, end quote, which is like, it doesn't, when you just read that statement on its own, it's not a threatening statement, but the way in which, like, that's like basically like one of the worst things you could do, right? Karn reveals that he wasn't allowed to see the report because he was forced to sign it because of that whole accident that happened in episode 3.
Also, something in common now. Both Karn and Dedra Meero, they don't like Blevin.
Yeah, because he's like, where's Blevin? Because he's probably someone that Karn had spoken with before or knows about.
Blevin was the guy who fired him.
Oh, right. But
Blevin,
also, like, yeah, that's right.
When
but
they're
also,
all lined up and Blevin is like,
that's
the Empire is taking over the Morlana sector. You guys all screwed up. Sign the report. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's true. But also, like, I presume that, Blevin would have been someone that he would expect would have information on Andor that he's trying to get in some way by doing an end run around it. Now, we then get to one of my favorite scenes from the episode, which is Dedra allows Karn to see the report, and then her underlings are like, oh my gosh, on today of all days, it's the big day. And they go to the ISB main meeting room, and they you cut to her mid-presentation. And this scene is awesome because I have been in a corporate environment before that
David, I gotta say, it does not speak well of of just America's corporate environments, or just corporate environments in general, that in literally every episode we do, you can relate so much to the way the Empire works because of how much it reminds you of your own experiences.
Okay, I understand that statement, Patrick. I'm just going to say that I think that they, the people who made the show probably took inspiration from the corporate environments and applied it to the Star Wars Empire.
Yes.
This is the first we are seeing that the Empire has these levels of bureaucracy. So like, it's not like this was around for decades and then,
right.
in my opinion, right?
I think what's interesting about it is that we've almost always in prior Star Wars, and I know some people had responded being like, you guys are always talking about how this show is different than other Star Wars things. And and to be clear, I'm not like dissing other Star Wars by being like, oh, thank God, Andor isn't like all that stuff. I'm just saying it is part of what's exciting about the show is that it is using this like familiar setting and just like this familiar material to do new things with it. That's exciting to me. But sorry, the thing that I was just going to say is that we always basically see the Empire as like a military operation, and that's with colonels and generals, and they're always at war. Seeing the Empire as more of a corporation,
yes,
is just it's a new perspective on it, and I think that's one of the things that is really interesting.
Right. So I'm not trying to compare any corporation I've worked with to a fascist regime in any way. I'm saying the show has taken inspiration from corporations, in my opinion, right? And in this case, here are elements of this scene that really resonated with me, okay? Number one, you have the stress of giving a big presentation to like a bunch of people, including someone who's very powerful. And also when you give a presentation in general, you're asking for something. You're asking for like resources, which in this case she's asking for a crap ton of stuff, to aid her in her search. So all this preparation, she's super stressed about it, but she has like people helping her out and so on. Partagaz is there basically backing her up, and that's generally how this goes. It's not like an underling goes up to the highest person like Wolf. It's usually you have like a sponsor who's like backing you up, and if they're a good manager, they will like provide support and chime in and kind of provide the perspective that's necessary for the person in charge. But obviously the most like kind of memorable element of the scene is the idea that this is all Dedra Meero has been working on for weeks. And Wolf Yularen, this is 1% of Wolf Yularen's brain space. Like, Wolf Yularen has other things he's got to do, right? He is thinking about this thing for 30 to 60 minutes on a Wednesday. And Dedra Meero is thinking about it all the time. This guy's thinking about it for like 30, 60 minutes on a Wednesday. And just like the power disparity, but also just like the mind space disparity, it just so perfectly nails what it is like to be in these circumstances in a corporation.
He almost seems asleep.
Right, like he doesn't care about what the person's trying to say. He's just like, how is this going to impact me and what I need to do, right? And so, again, I'm not naming any specific company I've ever been part of. I'm just saying, as somebody who has been part of companies and has heard tell of them, this scene totally nails what it's like to be in a company. I will say a fairly functional company. It's not like this is particularly like a terrible arrangement or anything, but ideally the person in charge is like more invested in what the underlings are doing. But this is a fairly standard, kind of way that a bureaucracy might operate. And the show is kind of positioning you in Dedra Meero's, like, it's making her sympathetic in this scene, which is, as we've said, really remarkable, right? Because she is trying to do something that we all know to be pretty terrible. And we also see in this episode that she's a horrible person, right? But the show is kind of making, I hope Dedra, I don't know if you felt it, but I was like, I hope Dedra, like, is able to convince the Empire that the rebellion needs to be squashed.
I mean, I feel like we've talked about this before. Yeah. We're, like, rooting for Dedra to like, get one over on Blevin.
Yes.
But it's the funny thing where we're rooting for Dedra to like, okay, I hope she gets her request for to like drill down on Ferrix approved, to like get more resources and more of a budget, and then skip over to when she's with Karn and she's being pretty rude to Karn, and we're like, oh man, I wish Karn would get some respect, because I will to jump ahead to the next scene when after that meeting when she's back with Karn, and Karn like stands up and he's being like, I was good at my job. I solved a double murder in like just a day or two, and I'm like, I really care about serving the Empire. I believe I wrote down a couple of his lines. He says, can one ever be too aggressive in preserving order? And then he says, I could be a valuable asset. And then she tells him to forget this ever happened and to go back to his job. And
serious blow for Kiro shippers. It's. I was thinking Dedra Miro might be like, okay, Karn, come aboard, prove yourself. But she's like, we never had this conversation, and if you look at me when we pass each other in the hallway, you're dead. I'm like, hey, how are Kiro ever going to come together in this environment, Patrick?
You could have said the same thing about Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan half an hour into You've Got Mail, and look at them at the end of that movie.
You could say the same thing about like Romeo and Juliet, and look at them at the. Oh wait, is that anyway? I guess it doesn't end well for them.
Also, Romeo and Juliet had a lot more working against them because they, Montagues and Capulets on like opposing sides of a war. These guys are already on the same side.
Yes.
They have everything going for them. I think these two kids are going to work it out.
If only they could see how perfect they are for each other,
Exactly.
But yes.
I think when Karn shows her his cool action figure collection, she'll be really impressed.
Yeah. Karn does have that line where he says, I was a good deputy inspector, which is like one of the saddest lines I can imagine a character ever speaking in any TV show.
It's so pathetic because you can see there where, they establish, so he's been at the Bureau of Standards for less than a month. So we'll say a few weeks. And he's been like, he's just desperately like sending these requests, just like try to get their attention, and then they finally come to him. This is his big break, and you can see how he's not a guy who's usually gonna stand up and like do unorderly things like he does there, shouting like, I was a good deputy inspector, but he's so desperate there because he can see his one opportunity to get out of his current position and to like maybe really join the Empire. He can see that like slipping through his fingers. And obviously this is not the last.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Is what Karn was thinking at the time.
Look, this is not the last we've seen of Karn. He'll be back.
Other thing to mention about this whole sequence was we learn what Miro knows about Luthen. Luthen now has a code name, Axis. And we later learn about Luthen, like they call him Axis because of, quote, his centrality to the organized rebel effort to acquire this gear, basically. And we learned a little bit about how vast that effort is spreading. Like he is the guy, he is the dude that's doing the thing, that they're talking about. So he is now called Axis. They're on to him, basically. They're on to Luthen. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay.
And Miro is asking Karn about the other guy who was with Cassian, and he just doesn't remember him that well. He's like, he can't even entirely remember like the color of the cloak he was wearing. He's like, I would recognize his voice if I heard it again. He's like, bring me with you to Ferrix. Maybe I can spot him.
Here's the question. How is Karn going to intersect with Luthen? He's going to buy his mom. He wants to buy his mom an antique for his mom's birthday. He goes into Luthen's store, right? And Luthen's like, welcome, what can I find for you today? And then Karn, like, dun, dun, like light goes on for Karn, and then that's how he's going to catch Luthen.
I mean, what you're describing does sound like a pretty suspenseful scene of like, just the thing of like, Luthen talking and being a shop owner as this guy like puts it together.
Yes.
I'm imagining like Hank sitting on the toilet in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, totally.
But also,
you're gonna get a scene of like Karn's mom demeaning him and being like, "Hey," and like she tells him what she wants him to get for her birthday or a special occasion. She's like, "I want you to get me a blah," and he's like, "Oh well, there's only one shop that has it, you know." And then they go, and that's how he meets Luthen. That's my guess.
The question is, can Karn, even with his current job, really afford anything in that store, which looks very expensive?
It's a good question. Okay.
He can browse.
Indeed. We should also point out that Karn like reads the report and it leaves a lot out of what actually happened, and so you get a sense that Blevin was really taking some shortcuts there to try to wrap this all up. So, anything else about the Karn Kiro storyline? We're gonna get back to Dedra later, but anything else you want to mention about Karn?
I think that's it for now.
That's it for the content. Yeah,
I just great content in this episode, and this is a huge step toward the Kiro ship sailing, and
totally.
Yeah.
All right, Coruscant. Bunch of stuff happens at Coruscant.
I mean, to be fair, this was also all on Coruscant.
Yes, that's true. Mon Mothma and Perrin are at a bar.
Is that a bar?
It's a bar within a party that is being hosted, I think, right?
Yes. And a thing that I'm now fascinated by, just, I always like the little details in Star Wars about like their way of life and stuff like that. It seems like there's a special, like they have these, what looks kind of like champagne, but then there's the thing of like dropping these like live alien worms into them is like, it's like an extra thing to mix into the drink to like make it stronger. And Mon Mothma is declining to have the alien worm added to hers, but Perrin takes it.
Yeah,
I want to know everything about these drinks.
Right, and he was saying how like, you used to like this, Mon, and she says maybe I was just better at pretending that I did before, and. But it's clear, I think, in this episode that Perrin is not only kind of a dick, but potentially like a real danger to what Mon Mothma is trying to do, right?
And I mean, we learned that they've been married since they were 15. She's been a senator since she was 16, and they got married a year before that.
Yeah. They toast and they say the words Sigrona and then Sigrona Tima, which are Chandrilan toast words, is what I understand. Look that up. We see Tay and Perrin meet. And Tay basically says to Mon Mothma, it's getting hard to move the money, and she's like, what about the money I've already moved? And he's like, well, we'll have to figure out a way to explain that somehow, I guess. I did want to give a shout out to the actor who plays Tay on Andor.
Ben Miles?
Ben Miles. He plays Captain Peter Townsend in The Crown for many episodes, and he's very good in that show. So I just wanted to say I did not even recognize him when we saw him a couple last week or a couple weeks ago. But Patrick, you got to see a second. This isn't a dinner party. It's I guess just a cocktail hour.
Yeah.
But still a lot of cool outfits, a lot of cool things. Got to see some Coruscant in the background. So
you did. I mean, there is a bunch of talk about the view and from that window. As Mon is just mingling and making small talk with other guests, just talking about Senate stuff, and this was actually this is barely even a criticism, but the people that Mon is talking to at this party was the rare time in this show that, and I mean, they're barely in the scene. They have like just a few lines of dialogue, but these people did not feel quite as like fully realized and three-dimensional as almost every other random person we meet in this show. They did seem kind of just like, like stock rich people who she's chatting to, but it's also, it's very brief. So, but
well, they talk about the PORD, Patrick, as you refer to the PORD. The what is it? What does it stand for? Public Order Resentencing Directive, which essentially gives the Empire vast latitude to administer punishment according to however it deems fit. And we learn some of the impact of that later on Narkina 5. But this is a classic debate about how much power we give the government to administer justice, to what extent we want peace, and like what civil liberties are we willing to sacrifice in order to get it. It's weird. What's fascinating to me about this is, like, again, last week people being like, yeah, I met with the Emperor the other day. Like it's just weird to think of the Emperor in meetings and kind of involved in like public policy, discussions. I know this is like a critical part of the prequels, and so like that's good setup for it. But as somebody who grew up watching episodes 4 through 6, the Emperor is just kind of like evil dude, right?
It's funny to imagine, Palpatine being like, did we receive enough votes for the policy?
What about subsection 50 and I don't like the wording and subordinate clause here.
Right. It's funny to imagine that guy, like the most evil looking man in the world. Yeah. Just basically, we're just talking about like an evil wizard going through paperwork and talking to like his assistants and just doing politics. It's like, no, this is a guy who just shoots lightning out of his hands and talks to Darth Vader. Like,
he's like, I have a new idea, and it's like, what Emperor? What's your new idea? Are we gonna do a genocide today? And he's like, no, I call it the Public Order Resentencing Directive. We're going to give these people sentences so long and they will suffer so horribly that there will never be crime again. Which is ultimately my goal, by the way. And it's like, okay, wow, that's not really why I signed up for this, but...
And also decrease the public transportation budget on Coruscant. Like, again, I think a funny thing, we don't see much of it, but in Revenge of the Sith, before the Palpatine-Yoda battle, Yoda does just show up at his office, where he's like sitting at a desk, and and at that point he's all wrinkly and with the hood on and everything. It's like no, he sits in a dark throne room because he's just the evil old wizard. This is not a guy who has to deal with like quarterly reports.
Yeah,
it's again funny to imagine. I don't think we're gonna see any of that in the show. I also think it might throw off like the tone of the show, but it's just fun to think about. Palpatine doing paperwork.
Agreed.
Feel free to send us in fan art of Palpatine doing paperwork, and
please.
We'll feature it on the Decoding TV Twitter account.
Yes.
Sorry, David, you run that account. I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, it's okay. No, I'm open to it. decodingtv@gmail.com. All right, anyway. So they're debating the Public Order Resentencing Directive, and it's just very clear that Perrin is starting to be suspicious of what Mon and Tay are doing. And that's about it when it comes to this storyline.
We once again see Mon's daughter, Lita, not liking Mon very much, and
not liking Tay either, which is also important.
No, I mean she's like a teen, She doesn't like anybody. She likes her dad. But there was one shot that stuck with me. It's like a wide shot where Mon is talking to people in the background, and then out of focus in the foreground, we just see Lita walk through eating what looks like a bright green cookie. And I just thought it was funny. It's just it's a very green cookie.
All right. Well, why don't we take a quick break for a moment, Patrick, and talk about where people can find your work if they're really into it.
Yes, that sounds great. There's a lot more me talking about movies, but in a more eloquent, scripted form in the videos I make over at youtube.com/Patrick H. Willems, where I just released it is technically a feature-length video about the filmography of Zack Snyder that's been in the works for a long time. And if you want, you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Patrick H. Willems.
All right. And obviously, I do want to just point out that if you are interested in supporting this podcast and want to see podcasts like this continue, hear us recap shows like Andor, The White Lotus, and many more, on the Decoding TV feed, all you got to do is become a paid member at decodingtv.com. We really appreciate all of our paid members. Patrick, Ferrix, back to Ferrix. You know, we had debated whether or not there was going to be more Ferrix stuff this episode or in this season. But there's definitely going to be more Ferrix. They spent millions of dollars and months building that set. They're not going to just let it go to waste.
And finally, my boy Brasso is back.
Yeah, I was so curious. Like, wow, they really took time to introduce Brasso in the first episode. Like, why would they do that? And then, yes, he comes. It's like, okay, after Tim is murdered, they have to get Bix has to have someone else to interact with in the mix. That's the role that Brasso serves, right?
Exactly. So, he doesn't do a ton in this episode, but yeah, he's around.
He kind of is befuddled by the stormtroopers and kind of uses his big old body to get in the way there. That was funny, but yeah.
But yeah, so it seems like we talked about in the last episode how Marva is really inspired by the Aldhani heist and rebelling and like finally like getting like the courage to at least like not necessarily to like be suddenly like, you know, taking up arms and like killing stormtroopers, but at least to maybe in small ways resisting. And we see in this episode, in the little bit of time that has passed, she has been continuing with that, where she actually like got hurt while like trying to, it seems like, pry open some like, what was this exactly? Did you write this down? She was trying to like pry open something so that I think like at the hotel they've taken over, so that the rebellion could get in if they came there.
Yeah. She fell trying to pry open the old Rick's floodgate.
That was it.
So that rebellions could come in. But it seems like actually, right, she's kind of almost like in a delusional state to some degree. Maybe Marva's going to pry open that floodgate and it's going to be okay and the rebellion actually will come through. But like she kind of is seeming to be kind of having delusions of rebellion at this point and in a bad state.
This was what I wondered about, because she also seems to be like, not just she like hurt her head when trying to pry this open, but
her leg, her knee, I believe.
Oh yeah, didn't she have like a cut on her head?
Possibly, I don't know.
But they're saying she's sick as well, and in this I was wondering, like, is she like sudden? I was a little unclear about this, where I was like, is she suddenly like so old that she's like losing like I guess her grasp on reality and like I'm not saying she has like dementia or something, but is she just like becoming kind of like a kooky old person who's like kind of caught up in these delusions, or does she seem out of it because she's just like sick? Like what exact? I'm not clear exactly what's happening with Marva.
I think it's approaching a dementia situation is kind of my guess, but I don't know. We'll see.
Because she didn't. She seemed, especially if you look at like the episodes like 2 and 3, she seems extremely lucid, and she knows exactly what's going on. And so I'm just like, not a lot of time has passed. Maybe, you know, a month or so since since episode 3, and I'm just wondering like how much could her mental state have deteriorated in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a little closer to like 6-7 weeks. On that note, Patrick. On that note, a lot of Earth units of time are used in the show Andor and in a lot of Star Wars, right? And I am part of a Slack group for my podcast, The Filmcast, and I saw a little debate going on there today about like why is everyone using Earth units? This is a galaxy, you know, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, so there's no Earth there, right? Why are they using Earth units for time? And some people in the Slack very reasonably suggested that maybe it's because like we're not hearing English they're speaking. I think basic is the name of the term, right? Or galactic basic or whatever it is. And so we are hearing a translation of that when we watch the Star Wars. And so maybe they're also, when we're hearing the translation of that, we are also translating it into Earth units, right? But that is actually not what the answer is.
Oh, you have the answer.
I mean, insofar as we have any answer, I think. But the answer, I think the in-universe answer. Do you know what it is? Actually, before I get into it.
No.
Okay. Patrick, Coruscant is the capital of the galaxy, right? It's also a city that is a planet, as you pointed out. How long do you think a year is on Coruscant?
One solar revolution?
368 days long.
Huh.
So they just use Coruscant time for the whole galaxy, and it's really, really close to Earth years, basically, I think is the actual solution.
Oh.
So,
okay.
yeah.
And
anyway.
the numbers same and everything?
Yeah, there you go. So
Where did you learn that?
that is on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
The Galactic
Figures.
Standard Calendar is on Wikipedia. So,
Well,
Okay.
how about that?
all right. Moving. I think you're less delighted with this than I am. That's okay.
No, I mean, it's a thing where I'm just like, nope, that all makes sense.
Yeah,
cool,
yeah.
checks out.
All right. So
I was kind of expecting it to be weirder and like some like crazy thing involving, I don't know, maybe like the wills or whatever. And so just being like, oh, that's just Coruscant Standard Time. I was just like, oh yeah, that's very practical and yeah, checks out.
all right. So Bix wants to get in touch with Andor because Marva's sick, and she wants Andor to know about it because Marva's someone that's important to both of them. So in order to find Andor, she goes to her friend Pax's workshop, and she's like, "Can I go in the back?" Which is her code word for, "Can I go and use this transmitter to try to get in touch with Luthen?"
Yeah,
What
same
she
way
doesn't-
that
yeah.
we saw her do that in, was it episode 1?
Yeah, I think that's right. The thing that she doesn't know is that Dedra Meero is on the case and trying to find who Luthen is, and I think they presumably figured out like that she was trying to reach Luthen and are like in the process of getting to Luthen. And so there's a scene at Coruscant where Clea says to Luthen, "Hey, the shop owner from Ferrix is trying to find you," and he's like, "Well, I'm trying to find Cassian too. Maybe we should talk." And Clea says, "No, we're at high risk. We're at high vulnerability now. You got to like seal this. You got to tie this all off, right?" So he's like, "Okay, fine, shut it down." So he shuts down the thing. Bix cannot get in touch with Luthen. That's probably the last time they're ever going to speak. But it's not the last time that Bix would ever deal with this, because what ends up happening is Dedra Meero's people are on the case. They descend upon Ferrix. They get Pac and Pac's father out. They're like torturing those people. Bix makes a break for it, does not escape.
Brasso tries to help. He
Yep.
like gets in the way of the stormtroopers.
Yep.
Also, I gotta say, I don't know who the actor is, but the Imperial guy who's like screaming at the stormtroopers to get her is, I'm just like, that is perfect Star Wars acting.
He's like, "Get her!" You know, he's like
but also,
crazed.
a pasty British guy in an Imperial uniform screaming orders. I'm like, this is what I love.
Yeah. And he says, so Brasso says, "Get to Zorbies." I don't think Bix ever makes it to Zorbies. Just like the Greenie Revnog, I don't think we're ever going to find out what happened to that. You know, like, so anyway, Bix has been captured, and Meero does this thing where she's like, "I want Bix to see this guy being tortured." And then when Bix comes in, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you know, get him out of here. I didn't want you to see this." And then I love like Meero's underling being so confused, like, "Wait, so should I do this or not?" Because I would have loved if her underling was like, "Wait, so did you want me to live in here or not? Because earlier you said you wanted me to live here."
Right. That was really good. And then like, this is almost the very end of the episode. We see the door closing behind Bix and Meero. The assumption being that Bix is going to be tortured for information on Cassian Andor, but the thing that we have not mentioned yet,
and Luthen too, I presume. You know.
Oh yeah. But the thing is, like,
I think Luthen's a bigger prize for Meero right now, in my opinion.
Oh,
like,
it definitely is. Yeah. But you know, she doesn't. I don't think she knows yet that that Bix knows Luthen or knows Axis. She knows that Bix knows Cassian, and Cassian is the link to Axis.
Really, that was not my interpretation, because why were they like torturing Pac and everything like that? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess because they knew Andor as well.
I think it was because I think they were able to figure out that they were like sending a message from his shop.
To who I think they thought was Luthen, though. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe I thought it was just the idea that it was a. Because do they know that these people have any connection to Axis? Or
that's what I assumed. I assumed that they figured out that sending out the message was trying to get Axis to give them the Imperial Starpath unit, and that's how they traced it to. That's why they tortured Pac. That's why they got Pac's father. You know, that's why they originally even thought it was Pac in the first place. So anyway,
or actually the. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like my assumption was just that they think Cassian is their link to Axis, and these people know, and their step is get Cassian, then get Axis.
Sure. Either way, Bix is in trouble. You know, we'll leave it at that.
But the thing we haven't mentioned yet is that there are more people on Ferrix.
Indeed.
Because Vel and Cinta are there. They got back together. Cinta got off of Aldhani.
Yeah.
And they are now basically watching Bix to figure out like how to get to Cassian from her, how to use her in some way. So presumably in the next episode, they are trying to kill Cassian.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like presumably they're going to get Bix out or like rescue her in some way. If Bix has they're Bix's only hope of getting out of her current situation.
Yes, I think that's probably right. And there's a lovely scene between Vel and Cinta. Cinta's like a complete badass in this show.
It's really becoming clear that what they'd originally said about that what Skeen originally said about Cinta being like the hardest of all of them is the truth.
You think the Empire stops to catch its breath. This is a fight to the death, is what Cinta says. The struggle will always come first. We take what's left. I'm a mirror, Vel. You love me because I show you what you need to see, end quote. The dialogue's amazing in the show, I think. But,
it's really good. Also, I do not have the script right in front of me, or at least I did not take quite as extensive notes as you did. Yeah. Is it implied that Vel comes from money?
I don't think so. That's not what I
thought I got that from some of their dialogue.
All I got the sense was that Vel is like, hey, she's like, she wants them to spend time because they've been separated for like weeks probably at this point, and she wants to spend more time with Cinta. And I will say it is remarkable that we're seeing a two female couple in Star Wars, right? Like, this is very progressive, right? Yeah.
It is. I mean, considering Disney projects have this tendency to, like make like an announcement about how like, oh, we have queer representation in, I don't know, like Beauty and the Beast, and then it's the thing of like, oh, you mean one vague line of dialogue that like Josh Gad has, and there was a thing where they, it got a bunch of attention that Rise of Skywalker was going to have like, the first. Like I can't remember the exact wording of it, but like
there was a kiss.
Well, like screen, right? They told us there was going to be like actual like queer representation in this movie, like canonically in Star Wars for the first time, and then it's like two characters who like don't even really have names kiss like in a wide shot at like the end of the movie, and that was literally it, and so this is actually like feels like real representation. It's like, oh, these are actually like fully formed characters in a gay relationship that actually care about each other and are not just there to like check a box and make and mean that like Disney executives can feel good about themselves by like, well, we put that in there to satisfy the people online.
Yeah.
No, like this is like, yeah, this is the real thing, and it's good to see.
It's
also,
remarkable.
and I want to say there's a beautiful crossfade in this episode where you see Vel. It looks like she's on one of those kind of like space shuttle things, like the things that Luthen arrived on, like the buses or whatever.
Yeah.
She's on one of those, and then there's a long crossfade with Cinta like looking through some shades out a window, and they're facing each other. So like they're separate, but like I think that might be the first crossfade we've seen in the show. And I think it's really effectively done. A nice bit of direction from Toby Haynes there.
Some decent match cuts in this episode too, I think, if I recall correctly. So yeah, the direction continues to be solid. Okay, so Bix has been captured. She's in trouble.
We are no longer rooting for Dedra Meero.
Yeah, we're no longer. Dedra Meero is a piece of garbage, and it's unfortunate. So, all right, finally, before we get to Narkina 5, the only other thing that I want to mention, dude. Academy Award-winning actor Forrest Whitaker shows up in this episode playing Saw Gerrera. I know he's in the poster, but I didn't know that he's going to be in this episode. Awesome to see him. He is kind of, Rogue One begins when Jyn Erso's a kid and then ends when Jyn Erso's an adult. And I think we're seeing at some point probably in between those time periods, perhaps, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is only considering that Rogue One happens like ends minutes before Episode 4 begins.
Episode 4, yeah,
and this show is 5 BBY, meaning before the Battle of Yavin. So basically, this is 5 years before Rogue One.
Yeah, 5 years before the main action of Rogue One. Yeah,
yeah, right.
Yeah, because there's that flashback scene in Rogue One. But yeah, I agree. And it's cool to see Saw Gerrera in this state because by the time he's in Rogue One, his brain is like mush, seemingly. Like he is so out of it and unhinged and like doing
Forrest
stuff.
Whitaker is given a really big performance full of choices.
Yes, in Rogue One. Yeah,
and in this scene, Whitaker still has like he's got like a voice and everything, but it's like, oh no, he's like playing a character who can have like dialogue scenes, and it doesn't just feel like a bunch of like big over the top ticks. Agreed.
But they meet on Segra Milo, Luthen and Saw Gerrera, and basically Luthen has equipment that he wants to give to Saw if Saw will meet with his guy Anto Krieger, who has been working on the Imperial power station on Spellhouse. And what you get a sense of is that Luthen really is going around doing these like massive hits on the Empire, like Aldhani Imperial payroll, the power station at Spellhouse. Like he is like hitting them where he's basically like a well-funded terrorist, pretty much for against the Empire. And Saw Gerrera is not interested because Saw Gerrera is an anarchist. And he gives this amazing monologue where he kind of lists the other components of the rebellion. And he basically says, all these people, this is all just kid stuff compared to what I want, right? So he does not want to work with anyone else. Do you have that list of all the other things that he names, Patrick? Oh, I have it. Oh,
you got it?
The Separatists, the Neo-Republicans, the Gorman Front, and the Partisan Alliance are some of the groups that Saw Gerrera names.
It's interesting. So the Separatists were, in the Clone Wars, portrayed as the villains. Those are the people that Count Dooku was leading. I mean, of course, the irony of the Clone Wars is that, Palpatine basically engineered it all, and there was no good or bad side. He's controlling everything. But so the Separatists were usually who the clones were fighting. And then the Neo-Republicans, I guess those are the people who seem to be, I guess, maybe the least extreme, the ones who just want the old Republic to come back and for I think those are like the Mon Mothmas of this, the ones who just like, oh yeah, want regular, ordinary democracy like they had before the Clone Wars to come back. And then the other groups, I think we've heard them mentioned before in previous episodes of Andor, but we don't know a ton about them.
Indeed. But I'm curious if we're going to get a sense of what else, like if Saw Gerrera is going to factor into the other events of this season. We'll see. I hope this wasn't just a one-time shot, but it is funny to hear him. And first of all, it's great to see Forrest Whitaker and Stellan Skarsgård together, just like two great actors acting opposite each other. Kind of, there's this one-upsmanship of like, did you do the thing? No, you did it, right? Like that's fun to see.
Yeah,
so.
like neither of them is taking credit for Aldhani.
Yeah.
But also this guy that Luthen wants Saw to meet with. We haven't met this guy yet, right?
Yeah.
This is another character that what's his name again?
Anto Krieger, I believe.
Anto Krieger. So presumably someone that I imagine we're going to meet before the end of the season.
Maybe, or like I wasn't sure about that. I think to me this scene was just to establish that Luthen has his fingers in a lot of different pies. Those pies being ways to blow up the Empire, literally.
I want to meet Krieger though.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that you won't, Patrick. I don't want to say that you won't. Okay. Anyway, that is Luthen and Saw Gerrera. And now we get to the main. Now that we're an hour into the podcast, let's get to the main plot line of the episode.
That gives the episode its title, Narkina 5.
Narkina 5. So we see Andor. We join Andor seemingly moments after last episode. He's going to jail. He's being pushed around. And somebody orders him to his transport on Narkina 5.
Well, okay. It begins on Niamos.
Yes,
and then he
right.
gets in a transport that takes him to Narkina 5. And again, he keeps just being like, I shouldn't be here. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
No one cares. And yeah, I mean, we talked about this at the beginning, but he goes to a kind of face-off-esque, like aquatic, prison place.
There was a really good smash cut when he's like going to the prison, and then like the score like amps up super loud, and then smash cut to Karn early in the episode, and it's like completely quiet in his hall of fuel purity.
Yeah, there's a lot of cross cutting between those storylines.
Yes,
like we're almost seeing like half a scene of one, then half a scene of Karn, back to Andor.
Yeah. So then I love, like, you know what's remarkable, Patrick, is like, they could have just cut to Andor arriving. Like, they didn't need to do all this stuff that they did this episode. But not only did they do that, there was this scene where Andor's on the ship, and they're like, take your shoes off. And then, like, they locked them into the ship, you know, like, and it's like they had to build a whole set just to do the scene where they're on the transport ship. And the primary function of that is to, I guess, show how they confiscated the shoes, but also, like, get a sense of this impending dread. You have no idea what Narkina 5 is. We've never heard of this, as far as I know. And so you just get this, like, ooh, this is a really uncomfortable feeling. He arrives there, and he and his colleagues receive a briefing about the whole thing, which is really well done. You get the sense that guy's given that speech like 50 times or 1,000 times before.
Again, a lot of great, pasty British Imperial officers.
Yeah.
And we get close-ups of their boots. The boots are very important. We also see, reminding me of the wall of gloves from episode 1, we have a wall of boots, like a rack that all the boots are on, which I'm thinking we may... Presumably, we know that Cassian is not going to spend his full 6-year term on this planet.
I don't think we know anything, Patrick. I guess we can't, because you're right. Because if this is 5 BBY, then it's
in
physically
5 years,
impossible.
He's going to die on Scarif.
So it's impossible for him.
He
to
can't. And so I'm
he
wondering...
needs to meet K2SO and become a captain of the Rebel Alliance.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in the 5 years, right?
There is. And so I'm just wondering, presumably if there is some kind of escape, if they're like planting that boot rack, because if they need to steal boots to escape the electrified prison. Yeah. Because what I love here is that they just spend this time, like, teaching us how this prison works, how they don't have blasters. They have like little electric prod things, but their main weapon are these little like controllers, these devices that just electrify the floor. And right away, when Cassian's group comes off this transport, they teach them how it works because they're all in bare feet, and they fry them, and it looks incredibly painful. And then they get ushered into like the main area where they show what they're going to be doing, where it's this brutal system where like he's assigned to a table, and they're all working and building like these like what look like Imperial weapon devices. But there's this like competition system where at the end of the day, the table that comes in last place, like in terms of like productivity, they all get fried. And Cassian, unfortunately, that day gets fried twice. And then the table that like wins in their room, they get it's like in their food they get
the winner gets taste. So they have like this tube that has nutrients, and it's like the winner gets taste with their food, and the top table wins flavor. Last place gets fried. It's like the whole second prize is a set of steak knives, third prize is you're fired, right? Like
exactly. It's
the Glengarry leads
right,
all over again.
Because the setup for like their lodging is so interesting. They're not in like traditional cells. They're actually in these pretty clean little like bunks where they have like they have like a toilet that flips down. They've got like little like tubes to like suck water and nutrients out of and stuff like that. They have a little screen displaying like the number of basically like the debt they have to work off. And everyone recently, because of the Emperor's the Horde, they had their debts doubled. But what's interesting about it is they don't need bars on the cells because at night the hallway just down the center is just electrified, and so they literally can't. I mean, there's this like harrowing scene where in the middle of the night one guy gets up and just commits suicide by stepping onto the floor, and they're even saying like, oh god, now we're gonna have to smell him all night. Like people are just used to people dying from being electrocuted to death on the floor.
Yes.
It's awful.
You went through a ton of plot real fast there, Patrick, and that's good, so we don't need to go over that again. But there's a few things I want to point out.
There's a bunch. I just wanted to explain everything about how the prison works.
Appreciate that. So, first of all, Narkina 5, just the look of it is really cool. It looks like a planet that has tons of water but no life.
I kind of got slightly less alien Camino vibes, if you remember. Camino, the planet where the cloners live. Very much again, watery planet.
But in the background, you see like these basically like what land looks like on Narkina 5, and it's all like gray rocks. There's no like green anywhere. So cool stuff there. I wanted to call out when they electrify the floor for the first time. I think they do it so that the guys who are getting electrocuted are out of focus. And most of the time you don't really see someone directly getting electrocuted for most of the episodes. So it is a cool thing where they let you imagine it, and it's implied to a large degree. He says our floors are tungstoid steel. I looked this up. Couldn't find any tungstoid mentions online, so I think this could be one of the first introductions of tungstoid steel. There is a really extended sequence where Andor is about to go into the factory floor for the first time, and they're like, there's all this dialogue that like makes no sense to me. Like, oh, so and so's on shift 4, and is so and so going to get here? I think what is meant to be implied is Andor is like absorbing all that, and he's going to use it to break out of the prison at some point, right? Like he knows where the weaknesses are in the guards' schedules, and so
it's the thing where, considering how exciting our heist episode was, it does make me very excited for a potential prison break episode.
I'm extremely excited. I mean, this is the thing, like. The advantage of these 3-episode arcs is you feel like continuity of storytelling and direction in these 3-episode arcs. Like And I do feel like the show has done a good job of going back to Ferrix, checking with Marva, like all this stuff. But it does feel like kind of Andor is going off on these like anthology like adventures, as opposed to like this all being one big story sometimes. So that's a kind of, it feels a little bit disconnected where it's like, oh, now he's having another big adventure. This, like
right. I mean, I think I have a feeling things are going to come. Well, to be fair, he was doing the heist with like everybody else, just a couple episodes ago. So he's only really been off on his own for 2 episodes now. But remember, many characters are looking for him right now. So
they'll probably all intersect by the end of the show, right?
I imagine they will, because the thing is like. The thing that's kind of funny right now is you've got the ISB wants to arrest him and probably interrogate him and torture him for information about Axis. His own allies want to kill him right now. And what no one seems to realize is that, the Empire literally already has him. He's just stuck in a prison.
That is it's an amazing piece of irony.
But the key thing is no one knows his name. He's once again using a fake name.
Well, let's talk about that. Keith Girgo is his name. And gotta say, Keith Girgo, good Star Wars name. Keith meets a bunch of other people that are part of his table. I'm going to name who those people are right now. Jembach, Zaul, Taga, Ulof, Ham, Melshi. Those are the other people at Keith Girgo's table.
Can I talk about Melshi?
Yeah, but I just want to say, like, what do you think of those as Star Wars names? But go ahead. Patrick.
Terrific names. I mean, this is a show that knows how to do Star Wars names.
Yes.
We're doing a really good job at that. But Melshi is an existing character. Are you aware of this?
No.
Ruscott Melshi is a rebel sergeant in Rogue One, played by the same actor.
Oh, crap. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He and that's the thing. He is one of the names listed in the end credits of this episode, played by Duncan Powell. And so, and
presumably when there's a prison break, Melshi's going to be among the people who escape.
Yes. I don't know if he currently has a connection to the rebellion, or if he's just a prisoner who is going to get involved in the rebellion over the next few years. I believe he dies on Scarif. I think he dies in Rogue One. But he is a rebel sergeant, so he has to rise to the level of sergeant, I guess, over the next 5 years. So that there's that character there. Also, it is worth talking about Andy Serkis. I know we've already mentioned that he's in it, but he has this interesting role as Kino Loy.
Yes.
Where he is a prisoner. He's in a prisoner uniform, but he's like the prisoner who is like, he's like the head prisoner who basically is like keeping everyone else in line and disciplining them. He's like the prisoner who is on the other team and just like working, with the prison guards.
Yes, which is obviously borrowed from real life, where often the people who are being oppressed, the oppressor will use people from that group to help them out with the oppressing. And I did think that was a kind of nod to that. But we've talked about how like everything on Narkina 5 feels like it's already been going on for years, and everyone's just kind of like you're joining it midway through. And I found that all fascinating. So Kino Loy is the unit manager of 52D, level 5, room 2. D is for day shift. And it was a little bit chilling, some of the stuff that Kino Loy said. Like, that basically he has complete latitude to generate productivity. So you can imagine how this could easily be abused, right? Or how if someone was sadistic in that position, that he would use it to further their own ends in a really horrifying way. And also that, like, Keith Girgo is like looking out to see who's out the window, and he's like, you're not gonna see them again. They only come back in to pick up the dead and bring in their replacements. So it's like, oh, so people like die regularly enough that you know that that's a thing that happens. So people can die while working in these sort of factory floors.
A key thing that we should mention, though, is that when they are being shuttled, I guess, through these hallways between like sections of the prison, Cassian sees one of the other prisoners making these like hand signals to someone out the window in another hallway. And so it seems like there is some kind of coordinated operation happening with messages being sent among the prisoners. So potentially a prison break could already be in the works.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I want to, this episode brings out so many topics to mind that I just think are so fascinating. Number one, we watch Star Wars movies, Patrick, and we see millions and thousands of TIE fighters, and this show answers the question: who's building all those things? And the idea is like, oh yeah, of course, the Empire would employ prison labor, right? And it does bring up the specter of prison labor, which is a thing that happens in the United States. Like prison labor is a real issue in the United States. Possibly sometimes, possibly most of the time, like not under quite as challenging circumstances as what we see in this show, but sometimes probably worse than what we see in this show. But beyond just prison labor, the idea of just like kind of like this factory labor in general, people who make our iPhones, may not work in vastly different conditions. Now, they don't have an electrified floor, but they are there in order to make their own livelihoods. And so I do like that. Again, what I like about this series of Star Wars is that there are so many parallels to our real life, and it is forcing you to think about elements of our society that are similar to what we see in Andor, right?
I totally agree. Actually, two things related to that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
One, when we have the scene on Segra Milo with Saw Gerrera, we see some what look like slightly earlier models of X-Wings that they have there. X-Wings are already a thing. They seem to be like darker colored than like the kind of like off-white ones that we see in the original trilogy. But we do see some docked X-Wings just on the ground outside. But a thing that I was wondering about with Narkina 5 and this prison labor is that it wouldn't, as much as like the Empire is evil and all of that, I would honestly not be surprised if this system, if this prison and this kind of prison labor existed pre-Empire. Because it's not like this was a like wonderful utopia before Palpatine rose to power, and he like suddenly installed prison planets and all these things. Like I bet you this was probably still around back in the time of the Republic, which wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, but maybe Palpatine made it more oppressive and unpleasant, right?
Exactly.
And increase the sentences for people and decrease the chances that they'll get out of there. So.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. There's clearly more people imprisoned and for longer now, but prison still existed. And especially like during the Clone Wars, they still had, all these like battleships and fighters and stuff like that were maybe being built by prison labor back then. Yeah.
You referenced earlier the scene where somebody offs themselves. And I thought that was a very fascinating scene because, first of all, they have like a term for it already. It's called, he says, Vimos railed it. Like railing it is apparently something that people can do when they jump onto the floor and kill themselves. But the other thing that was fascinating is like, as you said, people were complaining about the smell or that they're going to be one man down for the next shift. And it's obviously just a really clear sign of how dehumanizing this entire process is. Like when you put someone in a situation where they need to be productive in order to survive, that is all they will care about. They will not care about other people's humanity. And anyway, so just a lot of cool ideas, not cool, interesting ideas, thought-provoking ideas being brought up on the show.
I mean, in this episode, this is just, I mean, it's been said many times before that Star Wars is not really science fiction, that it is like, space fantasy. This prison stuff actually did feel like sci-fi.
Science fiction, yeah.
This actually felt like a plausible, like frightening, like real world prison system.
Yeah. And basically the best of what sci-fi can do is make us reflect on our relationship to technology. And like, if we had this technology to electrify prison floors, like what would that result in, right? What are the consequences and implications of that? How would it get people to treat each other differently? Yeah, people wouldn't have as many weapons because you wouldn't need them. But also the systems of the tools of oppression would be even more intense because like you can literally like have almost virtually complete control over someone's body, but not over their mind. And that's what we see with Vimos offing himself, unfortunately. So, and then we see it flashes forward to 30 shifts later. So Andor has been there for some time. He says very, very little in this episode. I almost wish they had gone all the way and have him speak no lines. That would have been interesting. But he doesn't. He says very few lines, and we just see him kind of integrate. He's kind of shell-shocked for most of the episode, like figuring out, like, this is what my life is now, And I bet Patrick. I bet he wishes he had taken Luthen up on that offer, or possibly even Skeen at this point.
Yeah. I'm sure he has a lot of regrets. Yeah.
But yeah, it ends with this cool shot where you're kind of like, you start close up on the table and it kind of pulls back and you see, you see him among the other 7 tables, and it's actually kind of a mirror to the way the last episode ended with Karn in the Bureau of Standards, like just amongst this whole sea of people completely dehumanized by this institution and system that he's part of.
Yeah. As in whether they are prisoners or whether they are employees, everyone is in these soulless, dehumanizing environments because of the Empire.
Yeah, indeed. Any closing thoughts, Patrick Willems, on this episode of Andor?
I am just, once again, it is... I'm still just blown away by how good this show is, and it's always not to get too much into like fandom and reactions and stuff like that, but like every so often when I encounter someone on the internet talking about how boring they find the show, I'm always like, wow, like what it does feel like we're watching totally different shows, and we want totally different things from them, because like this has a lot fewer like shootouts and car chases than, let's say, the Book of Boba Fett did, and I find this like 100 times more exhilarating, even when it's just people in rooms talking. Loving it, can't wait, and I still think it is kind of a like hilarious irony that Cassian ended up in this horrific prison because he went on vacation and was just walking down the beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that I think we didn't put enough of a point on last week, which is that Mon Mothma was concerned at Luthen's actions because she said people will suffer, and Luthen wants that to happen. Luthen wants it to happen because if people, and I think Saw and Luthen talk about this in this episode too, like if people are discomfited enough, it is only when they are not comfortable that people will take action, basically. And you need to make them uncomfortable, and in order to make them uncomfortable, you need to make them suffer. And that's what Luthen's trying to do, and I think it does light a fire under Mon Mothma a little bit, because she kind of tries to get this money moving and stuff like that. But anyway.
It's also worth pointing out that Luthen says that from a real comfortable position of privilege where
Yes.
he's like, oh yeah, I mean, what, these events that I put into action are causing suffering throughout the galaxy. Not for me personally. I'm living my cushy life on Coruscant here, and I'm doing fine. But like a bunch of people in like. With like a lower status in society, they're going to be like imprisoned and tortured and stuff like that because of this, and that'll make them want to rebel. But I'm still living the high life up here. So like, he's not suffering because of this as much as he has good intentions, and he's fighting the good fight. He is basically, he is causing the suffering of people who are not in like I'm not saying he's in the 1%, but people who are people whose lives are already tough, he's making them tougher.
Right. I'm curious, I'm curious to learn more of Luthen's motivations later on. He does talk a little bit about them in this episode. He says, like, to Saw Gerrera, I'm a coward. I just don't want to see the Empire gain too much power to the point where they are out of control. But that we don't really know that much about Luthen's motivations, right? So what is Luthen's rebellion, basically, is the question. So why is he rebelling? But I'm hoping we'll get some answers on that.
I bet we will.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing. I'm really hoping we get Cassian and Luthen in a scene together again.
Yeah. Also, like, as we're now approaching the end of the season, Patrick, we only have 4 episodes left, I think. It's been what a whirlwind time it's been doing the podcast with you. But I am curious if we're going to return to the Cassian Andor's sister subplot that opened the show. Like, Marva did mention it last episode.
I think we will.
Yeah, and said like, hey, don't look for your sister anymore. It's like she's dead. There's no way she's alive. But it really feels like we got to start picking that back up if we're going to resolve it this season. Maybe it's not going to resolve this season. Maybe it's going to be a season 2 thing.
Hey, maybe his sister just happens to be on Narkina 5. But look, I don't think they would have literally began the show. The first thing that we see is him trying to find his sister, then have those flashbacks over the first 3 episodes to his childhood with his sister there, and then have Marva mention it again in episode 7. I think this is all. I think Tony Gilroy knows what he's doing, and I have faith that it will all pay off.
All right, so say we all.
Hey, maybe the horrifying reveal will be that his sister is an Imperial officer.
Is Patrick?
Are you gonna say
is Cassian Andor's sister Dedra Miro?
No. Because Dedra Miro is, and I say this I'm a very white person.
Yes,
I'm Irish. I have like pasty pale skin. Dedra Miro is maybe the whitest person in existence. No, she is not Diego Luna's sister.
Yeah. Maybe she had, cosmetic surgery to fit in more with the Empire.
Maybe the Empire is so racist that that they're doing like race conversion, like treatments.
No,
on
but
people.
you're probably right. It's probably not Dedra Miro. Wouldn't that be an amazing twist, though? Okay, we're not going to talk about it again.
No. David, I've got the final line of the season for you.
Okay, hit me.
No, I am your sister. Look, it's like poetry. It rhymes.
Cut the credits. It rhymes. There is another. Okay. Anyway.
Okay, we're not topping that. We should wrap this episode up.
Indeed. Podcast.decodingtv.com is where you can find more episodes of this show. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, @decodingtv, and email us. Let us know what your thoughts were on this episode at decodingtv@gmail.com. Love the follow-ups. Until next week, he is Patrick Willems. I am David Chen. We'll see you later. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.